Well, so, I'm bald and gray for a reason, right? From all the mistakes that I made when I was running companies. And so, it's through those experiences you build up, hopefully, patterns that you learn from.
Welcome to 20-Minute Leaders. Just sit back, relax, and learn from the leaders of today. It's a journey. Each one is different, unique, inspiring. Let's get started. This episode is powered by J Ventures, a community-driven VC fund in Silicon Valley in partnership with Leumi Tech and sponsored by Hippo Insurance, Turing, Upwest Labs, and Hillel at Stanford. We are in Stanford's business school. Welcome Robert Eric Siegel, a lecturer in management at the Stanford Graduate School of Business. He teaches 5 different courses on strategy, innovation, finance, and product management. He is also a general partner at XSeed Capital and a venture partner at Piva. Along with holding executive positions in various startups and enterprises, he is the co-inventor of 4 patents and served as lead researcher for Andy Grove's best-selling book, Only the Paranoid Survive. He has a new book coming out later this year on how leading companies are combining the best of digital and physical in products and solutions. Rob Siegel, welcome to 20-Minute Leaders. I'm so honored to have you here.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
We're going to have so much fun in these 20 minutes. This is one of those times where I say I should have called this 30-minute leaders. I don't know why I wrote down 20 in the initial draft, but here we are. Rob, I would love to talk about your journey. I want to talk about your passion for teaching. Your lecturer at Stanford Graduate School of Business, by far the best business school in the world, and I have no bias at all, of course. But beyond that, you're incredibly active in the tech ecosystem, both as a partner in venture capital funds, as an investor, as a board member, as an entrepreneur yourself, also being in corporates, being a senior product manager at Intel, moving on to GE, and being a general manager for $350 million annual revenue line. And your research today is just fascinating on thinking more critically about the ecosystem and how do companies work through their, financial life cycles and leverage digital and physical, the integration of goods for customers. This is as much as I'm going to talk for this whole discussion. Rob, first of all, take me all the way back to, growing up. You go to Stanford GSB. Is this the trajectory you want to have? You want to one day be a lecturer teaching some of the most amazing courses that I can think of?
I had no idea where my journey was going to be. I grew up in Southern California, moved to the Bay Area the first time as an undergrad at University of California, Berkeley, was planning on studying engineering, was a horrible engineer, was just truly awful. In fact, no, it wasn't that I was a horrible engineer. It was worse than that. I was average. So I became a political science major and went to work as an undergrad for a software company at the age of 17. And so I've been in tech now for over 35 years. My career was a kind of a series of random walks. I ended up just opportunities presented themselves. I was with that software company for 6 years. I then went to Stanford. I was then at Intel. Then I started a company that got acquired by Kodak. Then went to another startup that was spun out of the engineering school at Stanford that got bought by Sony. Then I joined GE, which was a complete accident. Moved back to Southern California and then moved back up here 14 years ago when I became a slimy, scum-sucking venture capitalist. And so my career's kind of been a walk of large and small, investing side, operating side. The teaching kind of just happened. I started collaborating with one of my mentors, Robert Bergelman, back about 17, 18 years ago. We started teaching a few cases together. Then we wrote a couple of papers, and soon I was basically showing up randomly to basically all of the sessions in one of his courses. And so then I formally joined the faculty a decade ago as a lecturer, and then about 7 years ago picked up a second course, and then a third course, and then a fourth course, and it just kind of grew from there. So I can't say that it was planned. Each step made sense at a moment in time, but I never anticipated that I would be here at this point.
You're coming to Stanford campus, you're standing in front of dozens of business school students, some of the brightest people in the world, people that have done incredible things and they're destined to do even more incredible things later on. And you're there at the forefront that, as an educator, but also, person that really sharing with them your experiences, but how they can, even grow as entrepreneurs and business people. What is that like? What is that like being a lecturer in Stanford Business School? What is that responsibility and why do you love it so much?
So it's an interesting thing because when I'm up in front of the classroom, my job is to serve the students, and I'm fundamentally just an older version of them. When I did my graduate work at Stanford, I would argue that I was an undifferentiated student in my cohort from the class of '94 at the GSB. And so my responsibility when I'm up there is to kind of help coach and guide them both on whatever topic we're studying, be it strategy or product management or finance, but perhaps, even more importantly, to guide them to being a Stanford leader. What are the responsibilities that come with that? Because, we got very lucky, all of us who got to go to Stanford, right? 7.5 billion people on the planet on a rock hurtling through space, and we get to hang out at this place. And so my hope is that we teach them both not only, great skills that will allow them to hopefully achieve their dreams, but also kind of what comes with that and how should they be thinking more broadly about the implications of what they do. And I would say that it's great. It's awesome. When I teach in front of the classroom, when hopefully we'll get back in the classroom soon, it's like teaching at the United Nations. You see men and women from all over the world, from a variety of backgrounds, every continent's represented, every last name is represented. And it's a real joy to keep up with that youth and that energy and that fresh perspective that they can often bring.
Right. I can't even imagine how exhilarating it must feel to both teach the things that you're so passionate about, at the same time know that every year you're getting a new group of students. All of them are getting knowledge from you, but also giving you knowledge from their experiences. And I'm incredibly excited for hopefully one day to have the opportunity to sit in front of you in one of those classes. But really, I can just feel the excitement coming from you. Now, tell me a little bit about your involvement, on the VC side. So you're at one hand you're a thinker in the tech ecosystem. On the other hand, you go into the hands down and you dig deep into actually what's happening on the ground level. How do those two things balance each other?
Well, so, I'm bald and gray for a reason, right? From all the mistakes that I made when I was running companies. And so, it's through those experiences you build up hopefully patterns that you learn from. And then I got lucky enough to join a venture capital firm 14 years ago when I went to XSeed. And I had been at Intel Capital, or what was the predecessor of Intel Capital, when I graduated from Stanford. We were called corporate business development in those days. So the investing side kind of goes hand in hand with the entrepreneurial and operations side of trying to come up with something new and scale a business. What I love about venture today is that it allows me to kind of always stay fresh and what's on the forefront of what's coming 5, 10, 15 years down the road. And my work at Stanford, which also allows me to work with global Fortune 50 companies, again, from all over the world, you get to kind of see both how you run something at scale, which is a skill set that's hard and very underappreciated, especially in Silicon Valley, but also trying to be thinking about what's coming next and how are people going to have to grow and change involved, from how you develop products to how you organize companies to even the leadership skills that are required to be successful in a world that increasingly blends digital and physical.
Have those skills shifted, since you've been thinking about this critically? Are you seeing like really dramatic shifts? Obviously, with COVID and with the world changing around us, there must be significant changes that we have to make as leaders in our relative organizations, right?
Yeah, I would say that if we go back maybe even 10, 15 years, you had these two different worlds of what I'll call the digital world and the physical world. Companies that are predicated here in Silicon Valley, especially in the last 10, 15 years, the software companies, the Facebooks, the Googles, et cetera. There was a mindset, like a horizontal mindset of building platforms, and data becomes, your barrier to entry to other organizations. And we talk about marketplaces and network effects. But the physical world is still real. The physical world, where we buy cars and we eat food and we go on vacations and all these other things that we do, and that's not going to change. But the companies that built real things, that took a set of skill sets and competencies. And what we're seeing now increasingly is a lot of product, in fact, almost every product is increasingly connected. And so you'll have a digital and a physical component. And we're also seeing the digital companies go into some of these physical worlds. And a great example might be how autonomous vehicles are, coming into existence, and how Silicon Valley has been very active in that. The thing about going into these new types of markets and these new types of products is leaders need to actually have both skill sets and competencies of digital and physical. I teach a course with Jeff Immelt, my old boss from GE, called Systems Leadership. And it's the idea you really need to understand inside of your organization, how are different functions interacting? How's your company interacting with what's in its ecosystem? Who's under stress and pressure and why? Whereas in the old days, you could kind of be a real deep expert domain on one thing. And I don't think that's going to work over the next decade. The leaders that we're seeing come into our classes at Stanford and that we're able to study, you see the leaders are able to know how to manage small and large. You can't just be, hi, I want to be the innovation person, or hey, I just want to be the operations person. You have to know how to do both. And so you're really trying to see leaders have to develop skill sets that really weren't required before in order to bring your organization to the next level.
Right. So what's really about that shift and the integration between the digital and the physical project? This is something that somehow I didn't really get acknowledged until I started reading your research. And it makes perfect sense because on one hand, saying this early stage, all these early stage startups and reading Mark Andreessen's, software is eating the world. And, we go now through our academic studies and our work and we say, okay, yes, everything is software, everything is digital. We're forgetting about the physical space, but it's not that case, right? The case is that it's actually just augmenting the way that we're interacting with our physical products.
Well, there was some truth to what Mark wrote when he wrote "Software is eating the world." And by the way, it's a very catchy phrase, and people repeat it over and over again. Because everything is connected, and so that notion of how software enables you to have ongoing relationships with your customers, as opposed to selling a product once and then being done with it. But the other side of it is, Mark wrote another blog post in the last couple of years about the importance of building things. And we are three-dimensional creatures who live in a three-dimensional world. So even though you and I are doing this, over Zoom, when education comes back, when COVID is over, it'll be about it'll be about the ability for us to be somewhat in person and some doing this. And I think even in the classroom, we will be combining the way that we use the technologies for how we teach. You look at companies, let me take an existing established company. Let's look at Target, the American retailer. A big chunk of their business is that combination of digital and physical. They think and they use data to not only how do they sell you things online, but how do they design their stores? What's the drive-up experience where you order online and then go to the store and pick up? And conversely, we can think of a disruptor. Let's look at 23andMe and Wojcicki's company, which is basically using data, basically software and spit to develop therapeutics, right? And she's actually having to figure out how she will develop drugs and partner with GSK and then get them manufactured and distributed. So even though it starts with a digital DNA and a digital foundation, it actually gets into the physical world. And these types of leaders, Brian Cornell, who runs Target, and Wojcicki, who runs 23andMe, these are the type of people who have to be able to know how to do both. You can even think of someone like Katrina Lake, who was in our class a couple of weeks ago, the CEO of Stitch Fix. Sure, she's sending me clothes. In fact, I think I bought this shirt on Stitch Fix. But the data science behind it is what allows, her organization to not only give me better clothes that I might want, but to understand why I do buy things and why I don't buy things, and then design better physical clothes based upon the input I give in ways that other clothing manufacturers will never be able to. And it's the software, it's the digital that allows her company to have an ongoing conversation with me.
I'm incredibly excited about where we're headed. I think that now this understanding of this integration and how it's not a zero-sum game. Everything that we do has a piece that will be augmented through the physical world, augmented through the digital world, and the right entrepreneurs, the right leaders that are able to be open-minded about the different ways of interactivity and bring in the right people. I'm extremely excited about that. You also have some really fascinating thoughts about this idea of the financial life cycle of a company. And we're seeing, a bunch of different models that companies are using. I think that one of the biggest trends that we've seen over the past decade or so, both in Silicon Valley and where I'm from in Tel Aviv, this proliferation of funding and this consideration, okay, when is it right to become profitable? When is it right to have that step? And when is it even relevant? So I'd love to hear some of your thoughts on this.
So there's several things that you highlighted there that are worth considering. So the notion of when does a company become profitable, we were talking before this, right? Patrick Collison, the CEO of Stripe, when he was in our class, talked about sometimes you want to delay profitability and why. Well, in Patrick's example and at Stripe, they were using the opportunity to gather more and more and more data and the ability to kind of expand because of network effects, that being profitable was not the figure of merit that would lead to the best outcome for the organization. So being profitable was less important than them spreading their footprint. But the thing leaders have to deal with today, in a world of low interest rates, when you have so much capital coming into venture and the like for entrepreneurs, is how do they think about the capital they raise, and then of course how do they deploy it? And so the life cycle of an organization, as a CEO, you have to be thinking in the early stages, what's the impact of the investors' motivations versus how I want to build the company. When you go to a growth stage, how do you think about what your partners are looking for? And then at the time that you have a liquidity event also, what are the competencies and what are the things looking for in the public markets or the like? And it's all changing. right? We see what the proliferation of SPACs, which there's a bubble nature to what's happening with SPACs right now. We need to be cognizant of. But look at the number of companies that are using that as a tool to get liquidity and to go public, to raise capital, to continue to fund the growth of their business, but also to be thinking about how are they long-term going to be able to create liquidity for their investors and for their employees. So I would argue that the change that's happening right now in the funding life cycle of organizations is as dynamic as a time as I've ever seen. And what we're seeing is actually more and more capital going to fewer and fewer companies. And that's actually a really interesting dynamic, because then you get into questions of winner take all, you get into questions of winner take most. How will that, get to geopolitical issues that I would argue business leaders didn't have to deal with before. Not only do you have kind of the national treasures that countries need to look out for, we see that kind of between the US and China, but how does that create conflict between countries? And then by the same token, look at how communication and collaboration tools are going to continue to, if you will, allow organizations and people from all over the world to continue to work together in ways that never could have been done before. I mean, I'm teaching people literally from all over the world when they are in all over the world. I did programs for Moscow this week. I've done programs for companies in Sao Paulo and Rio de Janeiro and Jakarta. So, leaders need to be thinking about all of these things, about how you're going to have these kind of conflicting forces. And the financial forces that we started this question with are actually driving a lot of the behaviors and kind of what a leader is able to do with her or his company.
I just love this. Rob, one of the things that I get so excited, particularly a conversation like this, is just showing me how much I don't know and making me so deeply curious about learning about so many of the things that you're mentioning. So just thank you for sharing all this with me and for spending your such precious time with me. I really appreciate it. And we have just a few minutes left, but what I'm really excited to talk to you about is your passion. Your energy is infectious, and I need to know the secret sauce. When you wake up in the morning, what are you so excited about? How are you so excited about what you're talking about? Because I want to have that excitement.
Okay, caffeine. All right, so caffeine's a big help. So coffee is what kind of makes all this go. Broadly speaking, I'm about to be 53 years old. And, I was kind of a late bloomer in my career. And so I kind of get my energy professionally from, I'm at a phase in my life, my role is to serve others, right? Serve my students, serve the large organizations that I work with, serve my wife and my children. And so I found that to be very liberating, that my job is to help other people achieve their goals. And so for me, when I get out of bed every morning, it's like, what am I going to get to do today? Who am I going to get to work with? Who am I going to get to support? Am I going to get to teach finance? Am I going to get to teach product management? Am I going to get to teach strategy? And I'm lucky, you and I are lucky. We got lucky. We got to go to this place. And, just kind of every day I'm trying to be grateful for that and not get caught up in all of the normal ups and downs of life. I mean, I'm really tired of being in my home office. I don't know about you, but sometimes this place is awesome and sometimes it's my jail. And I'm an introvert. Like, I hate people. Like, at the end of the day, I'm exhausted. But at this point in time, I miss people. I miss being in the classroom with my students. I miss seeing them smile and laugh, and I miss making them angry, and I miss, confusing them, and all those things that come with being a teacher. But like when it happens, it's like it's magic. When you see a student get something, it's just like you see the light bulb go off, and it's like, yeah, I did my job today. I helped somebody learn something. That's what I'm supposed to do.
I love that. If there was one thing you could tell, students, whether they're 18 years old or 40 years old, but learners, people that love learning, what would it be? Because your whole career, I think, spans around this idea of being curious, being innovative, being intuitive, and trying to understand the bigger and smaller, ecosystems and what drives what. So as a lifelong learner that I aspire to be, what is something that you think that I can take with me? It can be general, it can be specific, that you would take out from your career? I know it's such an easy question, but
it's the opposite of easy, because you asked me for one thing. I would say I'm not going to answer the question you ask. I'm going to answer the question I want to answer, yes. Which is the key messages. I would say it's hard, right? Everything we go through, it's hard. It's not easy. Like, don't read TechCrunch. TechCrunch is around the same 19 people, and you think that's how the universe is supposed to be. Yes. That's not what it's like for most people. Number two, it's all going to be okay, right? If you're above ground, it's all going to be okay, right? We all get there. Third, getting old is a choice. And I'm not talking about the physically getting old, right? Because my body doesn't, can't do what it used to be able to do. But, the notion of if you choose to stop learning, that's a choice. the one thing in the universe we control is what we see in the mirror in the morning when we're brushing our teeth or putting on our makeup or shaving. And so the ability to want to learn new things and the ability to challenge ourselves and to push ourselves into our zone of discomfort, that's a choice we make. And so I would, encourage people to, don't be afraid to molt your skin every 5 to 10 years and to try something new. And yeah, maybe you won't be as good as you were as at the old thing, but that's okay because you'll master a new skill over time.
Rob, I'm completely inspired. Thank you so much for spending this precious time with me. I so appreciate it. Now the hardest question, which is 3 words that you would choose to describe yourself, or if I would ask any of your students sitting dead center front row in your GSB classes, how would they describe Rob Siegel?
3 words. Okay, someone's going to say energetic.
I can buy into
that. Probably someone's going to say short because I'm 5'6" on a warm day. And bald, it's kind of the golden dome is kind of the part of the trademark. And so, I would say that those are the 3 words that come to mind.
Rob, toda rabba. Thank you so much. Stay safe and stay healthy. And I can't wait to see you around campus.
B'vakasha. Thank you very much for having me.